From Bullied to Beloved, the inspiring transformation of Jessica Parker. Jessica Parker had always struggled with her weight. Growing up in a small town where appearances seemed to matter more than character, Jessica often felt like the odd one out. She wasn't just a little chubby. She was a target of cruel jokes, snide whispers, and relentless teasing from classmates, and even, at times, from the people she once considered friends. Jessica's journey wasn't just about shedding pounds. It was about breaking free from the chains of self-doubt and reclaiming her confidence. In elementary school, the other kids would make fun of her during recess, calling her names that still echoed in her mind long after the final bell. In high school, things only got worse. She would walk to the hallways with her head down, trying to shrink herself into background, desperate to avoid the stares and snickers. Even at family gatherings, relatives would pinch her cheeks and joke about her weight, not realizing how much those small comments hurt her deeply. But Jessica was more than the girl they labeled. She had dreams, big dreams. She loved to dance, though she never dared to join the school's dance team for fear of being laughed at. She wanted to be on stage, to feel the spotlight on her, to hear applause instead of whispers. But each time she looked in the mirror, all she could see was a girl everyone called too big. The turning point came during her senior year of high school. It was prom season, a time when girls were buzzing about dresses and dates. Jessica, however, dreaded it. One day, while scrolling through her social media feed, she stumbled upon a cruel meme a classmate had posted. It featured a picture of an overweight girl in a tight prom dress with the caption, "When you try to fit in but you just can't." It wasn't a direct shot at her, but it felt like a punch to the gut. Jessica slammed her phone down, her heart racing. She felt the heat of shame and anger rise in her chest. That night, she locked herself in her room, tears streaming down her face. She replayed every hurtful comment, every mocking laugh, every sideways glance in her mind. Then something clicked. She realized that if she didn't take control of her life, she would forever be defined by the cruel words of others. She whispered to herself, "Enough is enough." Jessica made a decision that night. Not just to lose weight, but to prove to herself and to the world that she was more than the labels others had slapped on her. She started small, swapping soda for water, choosing stairs over elevators, and walking her dog a bit further each day. Each small step felt like a victory, a tiny act of rebellion against the doubt and insecurity that haunted her for so long. As the weeks turned into months, Jessica's routine grew more intense. She joined a local gym, where she initially fell out of place among the muscular regulars. She'd sneak in during off hours, avoiding the crowded peak times, feeling like every eye in the place was on her. But with time, she found her rhythm. She fell in love with the feeling of sweat dripping down her back, the burn in her muscles, the pounding of her heart as she pushed through her limits. She also began to explore healthier eating. She taught herself to cook, experimenting with fresh ingredients, and discovering that food didn't have to be her enemy. It could be fuel, a source of power and energy. She started tracking her progress, snapping photos of herself, writing down her goals, and celebrating each pound lost. Over time, her confidence grew. She began posting her journey online, sharing her struggles and victories. To her surprise, others started to notice. People she had never met messaged her for advice, telling her how inspired they were by her courage and determination. The girl who had once felt invisible was now becoming a symbol of strength. Jessica's journey had just begun, but already, she was proving to herself that she could rise above the noise, the whispers, and the doubts. She was no longer just a girl they laughed at in the hallways. She was a warrior, a fighter, a survivor. And this, she realized, was just the beginning. The moment everything changed, Jessica's turning point. Jessica Parker had always felt like an outsider. Growing up in a small town where appearances seemed to define a person's worth, she had endured years of harsh words and hurtful stares. The echoes of playground taunts and high school whispers still lingered in her mind. But as painful as those memories were, the real turning point came one fateful evening, a night that would forever change her life. It was the spring of her senior year, a time that should have been filled with excitement and anticipation. Prom season was approaching, and the hallways buzzed with talk of dresses, dates, and after parties. For most girls, it was a time to shine, to feel beautiful, to make memories that would last a lifetime. But for Jessica, prom felt more like a spotlight on her insecurities, a glaring reminder of all the things she had been told she could never be: beautiful, confident, desirable. One evening, after a long day at school, Jessica sat on her bed, scrolling through her social media feed. She watched as her classmates shared photos from dress shopping, their bright smiles and glittering gowns filling her screen. She tried to push down the familiar pang of self-doubt, the voice in her head that whispered she would never fit in. But then she saw it, a meme that felt like a direct blow to her fragile confidence. It was a picture of a plus-size girl struggling to fit into a tight prom dress, the text brutally mocking her effort to blend in. The caption read, "When you try to fit in but you just can't." The post had hundreds of likes and laughing emojis, a cruel chorus of digital voices reinforcing the message that girls like Jessica didn't belong. Her heart sank. She felt the blood rush to her cheeks. Her pulse quicken. It wasn't her in the photo, but it might as well have been. She slammed her phone down, her chest tightening as the tears started to well up. She buried her face in her hands, the weight of years of shame and frustration crashing over her like a tidal wave. That night, Jessica couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned, every hurtful word, every sideways glance, every snicker from a passing classmate replaying in her mind. She felt trapped in her own skin, suffocated by the labels others had slapped on her. The hurt was so deep it felt physical, a sharp, aching pain that twisted in her chest. But as the hours passed and the darkness outside her window slowly gave way to the soft, gray light of dawn, something inside her shifted. It was as if the tears had washed away not just her sadness, but also the layers of doubt and fear that had clung to her for so long. Jessica sat up, her pillow still damp, her eyes swollen and red. She walked over to her bedroom mirror, her reflection staring back at her, tired, puffy, but alive. She took a deep breath, clenching her fists, feeling the anger rise within her. But this time, it wasn't directed at herself. It was directed at the voices that had tried to define her, the people who had tried to reduce her to nothing more than a punchline. "Enough is enough," she whispered to her reflection, her voice barely more than a shaky breath. For the first time, Jessica wasn't just sad. She was angry, and that anger sparked something powerful, a fierce, unrelenting determination to change. She grabbed a notebook from her desk and scribbled down a single sentence: "I will prove them wrong." It felt like a promise, not just to herself, but to every girl who had ever felt less than, every person who had ever been made to feel like they didn't belong. That morning, Jessica laced up her sneakers and stepped outside. She didn't know where she was going or how far she would go, but she just needed to move, to break free from the chains of self-doubt that had held her back for so long. She started walking, then jogging, her breath coming in sharp, heavy bursts, her heart pounding in her chest. With every step, she imagined the faces of those who had laughed at her, the cruel comments, the memes, the whispers, and with each footfall, she crushed them beneath her. She pushed herself harder, her legs burning, her lungs screaming, but she didn't stop. Not this time. As the sun rose higher, casting long shadows on the pavement, Jessica felt something break inside her. Not her spirit, but the grip of fear and shame that had held her for so long. She slowed to a walk, her sweat-soaked shirt clinging to her, her breaths coming in sharp, ragged gasps, but her mind felt clearer, her heart a little lighter. When she finally made it back to her house, Jessica collapsed onto her porch steps, her body exhausted, but her mind buzzing with a new sense of purpose. She wiped the sweat from her forehead, her chest still heaving, and whispered to herself through the tears that now flowed not from sadness, but from a fierce, newfound hope. This is just the beginning. And from that day forward, it was pushing through the pain, Jessica's fight for change. For Jessica Parker, the decision to transform her life was not just a fleeting New Year's resolution or a half-hearted promise made in front of a mirror. It was a line in the sand, a declaration of war against the voices that had haunted her for years, both the ones on the outside and the even harsher ones from within. When she first laced up her sneakers that chilly morning and stepped outside, Jessica had no idea what she was truly in for. She thought the hardest part would be starting, getting off the couch, breaking old habits, and facing the stares of people at the gym. But she soon realized that the real battle was far deeper, a test of willpower that reached into every corner of her life. Those early days were brutal. She would jog down the quiet, tree-lined streets of her neighborhood, her breath coming in ragged gasps, her legs feeling like lead after just a few blocks. Her lungs burned, her heart raced, and sweat dripped into her eyes, stinging like tiny reminders of every cruel comment she had ever endured. She had downloaded a running app on her phone, hoping it would motivate her by tracking her progress. But in those first few weeks, every time a robotic voice chimed with her pace, slow, painfully slow, it felt like another reminder of just how far she had to go. Jessica's body ached in ways she hadn't known it could. Her muscles screamed at her. Her joints protested every pounding step on the pavement. And at night, she would collapse into bed, her body a mass of sore, throbbing pain. There were mornings when she would sit on the edge of her bed, staring at her running shoes, fighting the overwhelming urge to give up. The gym, where she had finally mustered the courage to get a membership, felt like enemy territory. The clanging of weights, the whir of treadmills, the tight, toned bodies moving effortlessly around her. It all made her feel like an outsider, a visitor in a world she had never belonged to. Jessica would find herself gravitating toward the farthest corner of the gym, away from the wall-length mirrors that reflected her every awkward move. She stuck to the machines at first, gripping the handles of the elliptical as if it were a lifeline, her eyes fixed firmly on the floor, avoiding the glances of those around her. She couldn't help but feel the judgment, whether real or imagined, from the fitness fanatics who seemed to glide through their workouts with the ease and grace of professional athletes. She would catch glimpses of her reflection in the polished windows as she walked the locker room, her flushed face and sweat-soaked shirt a stark contrast to the sleek, stylish gym-goers who barely broke a sweat. But as hard as those early weeks were, Jessica kept coming back. She pushed through the pain, the self-doubt, and the whispers of failure that echoed in her mind. She reminded herself, again and again, why she had started. To prove to herself that she was more than the cruel labels others had given her, to reclaim the confidence that had been chipped away over years of ridicule. As the weeks turned into months, small changes began to emerge. Her legs grew stronger, her stamina increased, and the numbers on the scale slowly but steadily started to drop. She began to find a rhythm, her once clumsy steps turning into smoother, more confident strides. She discovered a love for weightlifting, the satisfying clang of the barbell hitting the rack becoming a new kind of music to her ears. Jessica also learned to tune out the stares, focusing instead on the steady thump of her heart, the controlled rise and fall of her breath, the growing strength in her arms and legs. She started to lift heavier, push harder, and dig deeper than she ever thought possible. One day, as she finished her last set of deadlifts, a fellow gym-goer approached her. He was a regular, tall, lean, the kind of person Jessica had once found intimidating. He paused for a moment, wiping the sweat from his brow, and then said, "You're really killing it. I've seen your progress. Keep it up." Jessica froze for a moment, her heart skipping a beat. It was the first time anyone at the gym had acknowledged her effort, the first time she felt like she truly belonged. She managed a breathless, "Thank you," her face breaking into a wide, genuine smile. That simple compliment carried her through the next few weeks. It reminded her that she wasn't just changing her body, she was changing her life, reshaping the way the world saw her, and more importantly, the way she saw herself. Gradually, the gym stopped feeling like a battleground and more like a second home. She made friends, found mentors, and even began to help others who were just starting their own journeys. She became known not just for her progress, but for her determination, her refusal to quit, and her growing strength, both inside and out. Jessica still had a long way to go, but each drop of sweat, each aching muscle, each step forward was a victory. She was proving to herself, day by day, that she could rise above the noise, the doubts, and the fears that had once held her back. Because Jessica Parker wasn't just fighting for a small number on the scale. She was fighting for her life, her future, and her happiness. And she wasn't about to back down. Breaking through, finding strength and confidence. For Jessica Parker, the physical changes were just a beginning. As her body transformed, shedding the pounds that had once weighed down not just her frame, but also her spirit. Something even more powerful began to shift inside her. She was finding strength, not just in her muscles, but in her heart and mind. Jessica's confidence had always been fragile, easily shattered by the harsh words and judgmental stares of others. For years, she had let those voices define her, allowing their opinions to shape her reality. But as she pushed through the sweat and pain, breaking down the physical barriers she had once thought impossible, her mindset began to change. It started subtly, like a whisper in the back of her mind. She would catch a reflection in the gym mirrors, no longer the shy, hunched figure avoiding eye contact, but a woman lifting weights with determination, her face set with fierce focus. She noticed the way her arms no longer jiggled when she waved, the way her jeans fit a little looser, the definition starting to emerge in her legs. These small victories fueled her, each one a reminder that she was capable of more than she had ever believed. One morning, as Jessica was finishing her run to the park, her heart pounding and lungs burning, she passed a group of teenagers sitting on a bench. She caught a snippet of their conversation, something about how hard it must be to run when you're not built for it. For a split second, the old Jessica felt the familiar sting of self-consciousness. But then, almost reflexively, she straightened her back, lifted her chin, and picked up her pace. She felt the power in her legs, the strength in her stride, and for the first time, she realized she didn't care what they thought. She wasn't running for them. She was running for herself. As the weeks went by, this newfound confidence began to spill into other areas of her life. At work, she started speaking up in meetings, her voice clear and steady, no longer shrinking into the background. She reconnected with old friends, finding the courage to say yes to invitations she would have once turned down out of fear of judgment. She even signed up for a dance class, something she had dreamed of doing since she was a little girl, but had always been too afraid to try. Walking into that dance studio for the first time, Jessica felt her heart race with the same nervous energy she had felt on her first day at the gym. She half expected the other dancers, most of them younger and leaner, to turn and stare, to silently judge the woman trying to reclaim a part of herself she had long buried. But as the music started, her fears melted away. She let the rhythm guide her, moving with a freedom she hadn't felt in years. Her body finally an ally rather than enemy. Jessica also found herself connected with others who had struggled with their weight, becoming a source of encouragement and inspiration. She began sharing her journey on social media, posting before and after photos, writing about the challenges and triumphs, and celebrating each milestone. Messages from strangers poured in, people thanking her for motivating them to take the first step, to lace up their shoes, to believe in themselves again. One message, in particular, stood out. It was from a young girl who confessed that she had been considering skipping her own prom because she felt too insecure about her body. Jessica's words had given her the courage to go, to pick out a dress, and to walk into that gymnasium with her head held high. Reading that message, Jessica felt a lump in her throat. She had become the role model she had once needed, a living testament to the power of resilience and self-love. As her body continued to transform, so did her mind. Jessica began to dream bigger, setting goals she had once dismissed as impossible. She signed up for a 5K charity run, then a 10K, each race a personal victory, each finish line a powerful reminder that she could do hard things. But the greatest breakthrough came not from the scale or the stopwatch, but from the way she saw herself. Jessica no longer viewed her body as a limitation, but as a vessel for strength, courage, and determination. She realized that the girl who had once cried in her bedroom, clutching her phone after reading a cruel comment, had grown into a woman capable of facing any challenge. And as she crossed the finish line of her first half marathon, the crowd cheering, her heart pounding with pride, Jessica knew one thing for certain. She had broken through the barriers that had once held her back, and there was no going back. This was more than just a weight loss journey. It was a story of reclaiming power, embracing vulnerability, and finding the confidence to live life on her own terms. And for Jessica, that was the greatest victory of all. Inspiring others, Jessica's mission to empower. As Jessica Parker's journey from self-doubt to self-love unfolded, she found herself not just changing her own life, but also touching the lives of countless others. What had started as a deeply personal mission to reclaim her health had transformed into something much bigger, a movement, a mission to inspire others to break free from their own chains of insecurity and self-doubt. Jessica never imagined that her story would resonate with so many. At first, she shared her progress on social media, mainly as a way to hold herself accountable. She posted photos of her sweaty post-gym selfies, healthy meals, and personal reflections on the emotional struggles she faced along the way. Her captions were raw and real, not just highlight reels, but honest account of the tears, the setbacks, and the small victories that made the journey worth it. She wrote about the times she felt like giving up, like when she hit a plateau after months of hard work, or when old insecurities crept back in, whispering that she would never be enough. She shared stories of the days she struggled to get out of bed, the mornings when her muscles ached too much to move, and the moments when the numbers on a scale refused to budge. But she also celebrated the wins. The day she ran her first mile without stopping, the first time she fit into a smaller dress size, and the moment she realized she could lift more than her own body weight. To her surprise, her post began to gain traction. Strangers started commenting, sharing their own struggles, and thanking her for being a source of hope. Her inbox filled with messages from people all over the world. Young moms trying to regain their strength after childbirth, middle-aged men determined to reverse years of unhealthy habits, teenagers struggling to feel comfortable in their own skin. They told her how her story had given them the courage to take that first step, to walk into a gym for the first time, or simply to believe that they, too, could change. Jessica realized that her journey wasn't just about her anymore. She had become a beacon of hope, a symbol of resilience and transformation, a living testament to the power of perseverance. She decided to embrace this role fully, using her platform to spread a message of self-love and empowerment. One day, while scrolling through her messages, Jessica came across a particularly touching note from a young woman named Sarah. Sarah had been struggling with body image issues for years, afraid to even walk outside for fear of being judged. She wrote, "I watched your videos and saw myself in your before photos. You made me believe that change is possible. Thank you for giving me the strength to believe in myself again." Jessica's eyes filled with tears as she read the message. It reminded her of the girl she used to be, the girl who once felt trapped in her own body, silenced by fear and shame. In that moment, Jessica knew she had found her calling. She wasn't just a woman who had lost weight. She was a warrior, a mentor, a guide for others fighting their own battles. Determined to make an even bigger impact, Jessica started hosting live workouts on social media, offering tips and advice to those just beginning their journeys. She created a private support group where people could share their struggles and celebrate their successes without fear of judgment. She even began speaking at local schools and community centers, sharing her story to inspire others to break free from their limitations. Her efforts didn't go unnoticed. Local news stations began to reach out, featuring her story as an example of resilience and determination. Fitness brands approached her for collaborations, eager to align themselves with someone so authentically inspiring. But for Jessica, the greatest reward was not the fame or the sponsorships. It was the messages from people like Sarah, the ones who found the courage to change their lives because of her example. As her platform grew, Jessica continued to push herself, setting bigger goals and dreaming even larger. She signed up for her first triathlon, determined to prove to herself and her followers that the journey never truly ends, that there's always another mountain to climb, another limit to shatter. Looking back, Jessica realized that the girl who once cried herself to sleep, the girl who once hid from the world, had become a force of nature, a voice for those who felt voiceless. She had transformed not just her body, but her purpose, and in doing so, had found a calling that gave her life a whole new meaning. Jessica's mission was clear, to remind others that no matter where they start, no matter how far they have to go, they are capable of incredible things. And that in itself was the most powerful transformation of all.